Welcome to Run With Purpose. This is episode number 38. For those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I'm so very glad that you found this podcast. Would love if you subscribe to the show, and you can reach out to me on all the socials at flores.run. This week, I have a special guest, and I'm going to call it like a blast from the past, where I want to say we found each other, but that sounds so damn cheesy. It's just not, that's the wrong way of saying it. It's like a Craigslist misconnection. No, it's not.
I found you.
What's going, why are things, my computer's going crazy. Okay. But yeah, so this week we're going to talk about a little bit about being uncomfortable and what that means. But the friend I have on the show today, we met about 17 years ago, and we were just talking before we started recording. It's actually been about 12 years since we've last seen each other, and now we're seeing each other through video screens. But Katie, thanks for joining on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. Pretty exciting. My first podcast.
There we go. That's what I like to hear, because you know what? It can only go up from here, you know?
Right?
So, and it will. If you ever did another one, it probably would be higher quality. Yeah. So, yeah, today, like I said, we're going to kind of dive into about being comfortable and how to embrace the uncomfortable situations and circumstances. Obviously, in light of everything that's going on in our world right now, there's a lot of situations to be uncomfortable, and kind of how we go through that. So, Katie, talk to the people a little bit.
Right. So being uncomfortable is pretty important, and something that you certainly don't just, it's not something that magically appears in your life by any means. At no point are you just going to be an expert at taking on any uncertain or unknown, if you will. That's actually something I've been exploring. I had kind of a journey through my 20s, which was super, I wouldn't say fun. However, it was necessary, I guess. To get to the person that I've thought that I wanted to be, I don't know that I could have gotten there without, tripping and falling on my face, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And we grew up we went to high school in Wellington, Florida. You and I were a little bit below the standard, I'd say, for the typical Wellington High School attendee.
What Katie is saying is neither one of us drove a Porsche to school.
Correct. I drove a 94 Celica that I had, my parents did purchase the air conditioning, but... and
I had my 92 Mitsubishi 3000 GT.
But yours had a very good sound system. So mine had, I don't know if you remember this, because you did ride in it, that I had this long key that actually plugged into the dashboard and then linked to my key that I had to turn the ignition with. So I had this
Would you have like a breathalyzer when you were in high school?
No, it was like, probably needed one. No, by the end of it, I was very good. Towards the end, but no, it was like this weird security key. So I had this weapon on the end of my keys that was this long. It's like a chain that I carried around.
I don't remember that, but it was also at least 12 years ago.
That's true. That's very true.
Gosh, I feel so old saying that. When I wrote the 17 years in the notes, I was like, oh, this is not good.
I know. And I did not go to my 10-year reunion either, but
whatever.
Maybe I'll have to do that later. Did you go to yours?
No. Well, so did you keep in touch with really anyone other than Nicole?
I did for a hot minute. That's the interesting thing. My path kind of started taking me in a different direction, and a lot of the friends that I had growing up, their lives took them in a different direction, and in a direction that we couldn't really see eye to eye on anymore. More of a keeping up with the Joneses, and just a very interesting, a perspective that's not what I have. So, besides Nicole, I do keep in touch with probably 5 people from high school. So.
Yeah, I can't think, the only person that I still talk to, you might remember him as a new kid, but Mike Perone.
Mm-hmm.
he's probably one of my best friend, if not a very, very good close friend, because he's the only person I still talk to, I think, out of like anywhere I've been, whether it's North Carolina or Florida. I'm actually seeing him in LA in a few weeks, so that'll be nice to fly the planes via COVID. Let's see what happens. Roll the dice.
Yeah. Wear your mask, otherwise you'll be put on the blacklist.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you brought up like the keeping up with the Joneses, because we can fall into that like comfortable kind of stage of like, if everyone else is just going this route, like I should just do it too, because it's going against the grain is a hell of a lot harder. Not even like action wise, like it's obviously hard to go against the grain, but then you have all of like the emotions and everything else that comes with it, where if you're not doing exactly what everybody else is doing, you can kind of feel like you can just basically like be emotionally shut down.
100%. The saying is, or from what I read, people are more afraid of criticism from other people than they are of death.
I believe that.
They are more, judgment of other people is scarier to live in a world like that than death. And I mean, unfortunately, that is becoming a bit more of a trend as we moved into this time. But
right.
Yep.
Well, that's how it's like, especially, so you're talking about these times and stuff, like with COVID as itself, it's, people are saying, that feeling that you're feeling of not seeing anyone, that's basically depression. And you're not really understanding that. Like your mind needs people to interact with. A screen doesn't give you that same kind of feeling as being with someone. And we can kind of get into these riffs of, just accepting things the way they are. Like you had made a comment of you kind of grew apart from the way they were living their lives or the trajectory they were on. Like, how did you deal with that?
Better than I thought, I suppose. You get to a point where, and that's, I guess, my kind of 3 points. So when you start to get uncomfortable, my path started out, in college. I had grown up pretty well off. I never really wanted or needed for anything when I lived in Wellington, Florida. My parents were very good to me. Did have chores on Saturday. I did a lot of work around the house. So going into taking care of myself was the easy part, but living on my own was not. So I went to Colorado in high school. I remember I'd gotten into like FSU and to Orlando, UCF.
UCF, yeah.
And I was like, okay, we're going to go to college. And I went home one day from high school and I started crying and sitting at the table. And my mom's like, what is wrong? Like, what is the problem? And I was like, if I do this, I'm going to get a husband, I'm going to get a career, I'm going to get a job, and my life's going to be over. And like, that's it. And she goes, well, what do you mean? What do you want to do that you feel like you haven't done? And I was like, I want to snowboard. And she goes, what? What do you mean? She's like, you don't know how to snowboard. And I said, that's the point, Mom. So I had kind of had this realization that I got very scared of what was in front of me. Yeah. And doing the 9 to 5 and seeing that lifestyle. And I thought I was, kind of had romanticized this great adventure that I would go on. And I was, got disappointed with adulting and realized that it wasn't as easy or as glamorous, and that, being in college had some kind of protection and it was kind of a party world that you lived in a bubble. And then you get out of that bubble. And so I had a degree in economics. I graduated in 2011, a minor in international business. And my first job was hustling straighteners at Sam's Club in Jacksonville, Florida. Absolutely. So, and it was just a humbling experience. I made $7.50 an hour if I didn't meet my sales goals, which I hardly ever did because no one is buying stuff like that from Sam's Club.
Right.
You avoid those salespeople. I was that hustler kiosk.
You go around the other aisle to make sure you avoid them.
I made up a rap about makeup at one point.
That's how busy you were?
Yeah. So, and moved out to Colorado again after I graduated. So I graduated from UNF in Jacksonville. Love Jacksonville, Florida.
You went to UNF?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess would have been if you would have. Never mind. You graduated high school when I left.
Yeah, I did community college for my first 2 years because I had a pretty good scholarship, so I didn't pay anything. And I lived in Colorado, but took all my classes online. And then went to UNF to finish my bachelor's degree.
I went to UNF for a semester because I forgot. I was supposed to stay there longer, but I was there for the spring semester and I was staying on campus housing. And apparently you're supposed to sign up for the fall, like in February. And I didn't know that. So I didn't have a place to live. So I had to move back to West Palm or move back to Wellington. And then that's why I graduated from FAU, because I had to live at home while I went to FAU.
Okay. Well, yeah, so you've been to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was awesome. UNF is like an awesome school. Like the campus is awesome. Like where it's at is awesome. I really like Jacksonville.
Yeah, that was a good place to have ended up. Granted, fell into a crowd that was like partying, and we went out all the time. And mostly in college, I learned how to party. So that was an interesting experience. And then you hit the reality of going from partying and living in a bubble and going to school to being kicked out on your ass and making $7.50 an hour to, and it kind of kicks you in the teeth. So moved back out to Summit County and got a job working at the condo check-in desk, and ended up kind of snowballing into only being able to get hospitality jobs. And I was stuck. And I'm thinking, this isn't the field I got into. I wanted to do business consulting. I have a degree in economics. I followed the path that I was supposed to stay on. I got really good grades. I got a scholarship. I did all kinds of sports. And here I am making $7.50 an hour with a degree that they told me I would be able to get a job with. And that was rough. So worked for Vail Resorts, worked for Quiznos corporate office, worked for Modus, which was recruiting, and kind of, in my opinion, recruiting is not a step up from indentured servitude when it comes to IT. Because there are people who own other people's visas, and they negotiate the terms, and they decide when that person has paid off their debt and what that price is, and it felt weird, and I bailed. And I got a paralegal certificate and pounded pavement for 3 months, took a job making $15 an hour, got a raise for $15.50 for the next year as a paralegal for, it was a small like boutique divorce firm. And let me tell you, woo!
I bet the stories you were there.
You want a crash course into legal? You do some divorces with somebody who's been doing it for 35 years or 30 years, 32, I think. So that was quite an eye-opening experience. But the trend that I started to notice, at least in myself, was the very first thing that happened is I became very disgusted with myself. I started to think, I just don't like the person that I see looking back at me in the mirror. I don't, you don't have the life that I thought we would have. And I started to dislike myself, which was toxic. So that kind of created a fun cycle, but it was the first part in awareness. And the second part in the awareness is realizing that you're not unhappy with yourself and who you are, that you're unhappy with the decisions that you're making. So you start to realize the difference between self and realizing the qualities that you have and separating those from the decisions that you are making for yourself. So I started to, okay, this is a bad decision. Is this decision or investment? Because I did like to shop and had a job making $15 an hour. So I had to start kind of asking myself, is this decision going to invest in me? Is this going to make me better? Is this going to contribute, even if it was, entertainment? Is this a positive entertainment experience kind of thing? And what are the reasons behind making this decision? So started evaluating those. And then even took it a step further to getting to the point where you started to realize, okay, well, it's not now the decisions that I'm making, it's my mindset that is controlling how I'm acting. And you start to, that part sucks. Sometimes I really just want to stay mad or stay upset but knowing that you have control over that is a game changer, and taking accountability and being able to harness your mindset, your emotions, and your, energy, I guess, in a way, is the most productive way to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I just went on a rant.
No, it was great. Like, I'm trying to write down notes at the same time, because there's a lot of good little things in there that again, we haven't talked in many, many years, but our brief conversations that we were having that kind of led to, hey, do you want to be on the show? Because I think it'd be a good conversation. Is we have a lot of the same similar things, but I would say a little bit on the opposite. I got the corporate job. I got what I thought I wanted, making money that I thought I wanted to make, and doing this. And it's like, all right, I worked for BMW for 9 years, and I was driving company cars, and they flew me out to Munich once. I used to work in New Jersey here and there, and I thought I had this.
Nice clothes.
Do what?
To work, right? You were probably wearing nice clothes to work, and
yeah, it was definitely it was this facade of what I thought. I went to school and I got a finance degree, and this is what was going to happen. If I finally made it, and then I really, to your point of kind of thing, is I became uncomfortable with myself. I hated myself for what I had become because of the decisions I made, and then quickly realized, hey, change it. It's that simple. You can control these things to a point. Obviously, there's circumstances that happen to people, and that's a whole nother thing, but you can still control your mindset and how you react in that situation. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react. And I think, like you said, it's once I realized that, I said, you know what? I don't need this shit. I don't need to be treated the way I am at work and not valued and all this stuff. I'd rather go take a job making less money and doing this. Now, lucky for me, I applied to a job that I'm not making less money now. I'm actually making more money, and it's great. But the company has the value of the company has an actual purpose. I'm not just selling rich people rich cars. That I'm actually helping people, and I think that was my big thing. Is I didn't have a real mission. My what I wanted to do, help the world or do something to make a difference in some way, shape, or form. All I was doing is helping rich people get richer and making sure that they drove fancy cars. And at the end of the day, I was like, well, this is dumb. And and Kayla and I had the realization as well, as we were doing, not necessarily keeping up with the Joneses, because we always had that separate of we don't need all this extra stuff that other people had. But then we took a hard look and said, why do we need this 4-bedroom house in the suburbs? We don't. Sold our house, and now we live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and now we're even talking about possibly going to a 1-bedroom apartment. We don't need all these things. Let's sell this, give money and help people, and do things like that. And it's crazy how when you rid yourself of all of these extra things that kind of weigh you down physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, when you shed those things, just how much happier you feel. You just feel lighter, and just, I don't know. I'm reading a book I just started yesterday. I'm reading a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And
yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I'm only in the second chapter. I started reading yesterday, but I'm it's that exact mindset. It's not saying, hey, just F everything, I don't care, but it's the idea of you shouldn't care what other people think about what you're doing, kind of thing. You shouldn't be doing something for someone else.
Yes. And that's been a game changer on how I look at wealth too, because everyone associates money with a very negative context for the most part. What I have learned and expanded my mind to understanding is that wealth doesn't have to be something where you're penny grubbing and you're self-interested. I have a friend that does very well in Jacksonville, and I solely believe that it is just because she's an amazing person. She never says anything negative about anyone. She doesn't take anything to heart, or at least she doesn't show it. It's, you admire those people that are able to put good out into the world and completely not care if it's uncomfortable, what comes back. Mm-hmm. They don't care. And that is something, she will send me motivational stuff, and it doesn't matter if I respond or don't respond. She'll still reach out and say something the next day. That is something, those are the types of people I admire, that they can still do that and not take anything personal. And we all take things, very personal and make it about ourselves. And like you were talking about, when you're able to get rid of that and take your power back, and it just changes the game.
Yeah, it really does, because you make a point. There's nothing inherently wrong with money. So just because you make a lot of money with what you do, that's fine. If you make a little bit of money with what you do, that's fine as well. It's when we play that comparison game or look what they have. I mean, we have the problem now with social media or media in general, marketing in general. You need to have the latest and greatest all the time and everything. I mean, it's funny enough, this is my phone. It's the size of a credit card. And it runs Android, but I have no, let's unlock this thing. We're gonna get real crazy here.
That is the tiniest phone.
This is my home screen. It just has the apps that I use and nothing else. And that's all I want to know. And it's things like that. Like when I switched, something as simple as I'm just gonna get a tiny phone. People lost their shit. Like how could I do that? That's so against the grain. How are you going to do anything? And it's like, no, I don't need a phone that's the size of my head to make phone calls. And it's kind of we're letting our tools kind of control us and control our actions instead of the other way around. Is we should be using these tools to do whatever we want to do and not having the tools use us.
Yep, I agree. It's been... Social media is a game in itself. There's a lot of hypocrisy in just the fact that, unfortunately, living an American lifestyle puts you at an advantage that the rest of the world doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And we forget that when we talk to our peers and people. And yeah, it's gotten kind of rough lately, but
yeah. Well, I mean, with everything that's going on right now too, and I'll commend you for that, because you are going through your Facebook posts and stuff like that. Like, it's not, you're never like argumentative or like condescending to anyone. You speak facts and you speak logic into a situation. If someone doesn't agree with you, so be it. You don't like verbally attack them, but you give your voice on the platform that you have, and kind of just making things aware. But the way you do it and like calling people out on their shit, it's one of those where I'm definitely like that Michael Jackson meme where I'm just like eating the popcorn, just like sitting back, scrolling through your comments. Cause I'm like, that's exactly what I feel like.
So the interesting thing that you bring that up. So that is actually one of the ways that I have used to continuously expose myself to being uncomfortable. 100%. I was not a tactful person in the beginning when I was engaging in conversations of that nature. And I have used that as a way to expose myself to other views, to other opinions, to not getting offended, to make myself a bit more tough, I guess. Mm-hmm. Because it's true. I mean, I don't need to take things personally. These people don't know who I am beyond a photo and a few comments. And channeling that and understanding their anger and realizing what's coming from the other side puts you in a position to actually have a conversation at some point. Or to make, nothing good comes from reacting the same way that someone reacts to you. And yeah, I actually use my Facebook kind of as a platform to say things that make me uncomfortable. Like, I will be honest, I have anxiety. Yesterday when I posted the photo of what I believe, if Aunt Jemima is racist, then I do believe that Cardi B is a racist depiction of a black woman in today's time, chasing money and, doing things that are not, as we as society would say, are appropriate. Mm-hmm. And that gave me a lot of anxiety.
Right.
You know, but that's the thing. I'm trying very hard to put myself in uncomfortable situations so that I can hear both sides, so that I can be unbiased, so that I can see, there's a demoralized person can't see, hear, or think, in my opinion. So to take your power back and to be able to speak from a place where you're able to listen and you're not antagonistic opens you up to even a greater enlightenment and understanding. So it's both selfish and and an attempt to help people at the same time.
Yeah, but I think to your point there, like you said, you're making yourself uncomfortable, putting yourself there, especially on social media where people are just vultures waiting for anyone to say something that may be taken just slightly the wrong way. And just being, again, you're making not argumentative points, you're making a point and you're just standing by it because that's what you believe and whatever the case might be. But you're like, again, you're not argumentative, and I give you kudos for that, because there's no way, like, anytime, and I have a hard problem, and I'm trying to get off of social media as much as I can, other than for like business purposes or like to communicate with people that I actually know, rather than just like, hey, who the hell are you? Why are you following me? It is because of that exact fact. If someone says something, like, my first reaction is like, you are going down. Whether my opinion, it's an opinion, whether it's right or wrong, whatever the case might be, if you're coming after me and I just slap back at it, that's doing nothing for either one of us. It's making it worse for me, because you're just going to jump, more than likely the other person's going to jump back on it. And if they don't, then you just feel like an asshole for doing it anyways. And then
you know that feeling you get when you get that mad, you know, that feeling that like rises up and you start to feel kind of like numb, and you're like, yeah, that right there is what you're trying to control. And that's why you have to practice. That's why. I mean, that is my entire point. That feeling should not exist. You should not get that feeling, that fight or flight, absolute, just, I can't see feeling.
That makes sense.
When you engage with people that don't have your opinion, or even people who attack you, because what they're saying is more of a reflection on them than you.
Yeah. I think more of my stuff lately has been, I don't necessarily need someone to agree with me, and I don't need to agree with someone else. It's the attacking part. Like, I do have that very defensive kind of thing. And I don't know if it's how I was raised or whatever the case. I mean, you know my family, so we're not going to get into that kind of battle, but, you know, I don't know if it has do what?
No, it does. You're right. It 100% does. Being defensive is, you know, the anxiety of being criticized. You know, when you get defensive, it is lashing out because someone has come at you and you're like, no, you know, knocked over.
Oh shit.
Yeah. It's natural. And that's a feeling that being uncomfortable is something that we don't embrace anymore at all. In fact, we push it away and we try not to engage in uncomfortable situations. And we're really bad at it now.
Yeah. That's for it.
We're horrible at it.
Like we talked about, my motto in the past few years is getting comfortable with discomfort. And there's a lot of little things that I've done that kind of add up to that. And having times like we're in now, it's definitely testing that and trying to see like, all right, Jonathan, like, are you think you're somewhere, but you're obviously not, because you still have a lot of work to do to get to places. But I mean, I've seen the changes I've made in trying to just put myself out there in situations to be criticized and to accept the criticism and learn from it and continue on and not be afraid to try. I think one of my buddies had said, well, I call him a buddy. I met him. He ran, I don't know if you know the story. It's a guy, his name's Pete. He ran from Kenai, Alaska to Key West, Florida. In 98 days he did it in. Crazy thing is I didn't, apparently he has the world record for running across the country, and he's got a bunch of races that he's won and stuff. I didn't know of this guy. I'm actually in Alaska on vacation, And I see this guy running with a stroller saying like Kenai to Key West. And I'm like, he can't mean like Key West, Florida. Like there's no way. And then 2 days later, on our way back to the airport, we saw him again. And I was like, hey, maybe I should go run with him. And Kayla's like, sure. We pull over. I get out of the car. I run 2 miles with this guy and just talk to him and stuff. And we've been in contact ever since. But he had this thing of like, why would you do something like this? Why would you run from Alaska to Key West? Like, aren't you afraid of like failing or something? He's like, if you're not afraid of failing, it's not worth doing. You're kind of just living on the, I know the outcome before I even do anything. So what's the adventure in that? You had made mention of that, talking about like the going straight into the 9 to 5 and missing out on the adventure, like just going straight into adulting. And I was kind of, I wouldn't say I was thrown into that, but when I graduated college, my last semester, I was sleeping on a couch of one of my family's friends because my dad moved to Tampa with his job change. So I didn't have anywhere to live. He's like, well, just transfer. I'm like, Dad, I've been to 5 colleges already. Like, I'd like to just graduate now. That would be great. And so the last semester, I'm like sleeping on a couch, and literally I graduate. I was working at Apple making $8 an hour. And I'm like, I know no one in Wellington. I can't afford to live in Wellington on $8 an hour. I'm like, how is this, like, this is not going to play out well. So I moved to Ohio, and it's like, all right, you know, at the time, Kayla and I were already engaged, but even then it was like, all right, now start going to work, I guess. And that's just going to be your life. And for that was in fall of 2008. So basically for 9 years, I just kind of just went along with, you know what, this is what life is now. You know, this is just all it's going to be. You know, I was happy-ish. I was happy, but I felt not fulfilled. And then I realized like the thing that was holding me back was me and my ability to not embrace a situation that I wasn't certain of the outcome.
Yep. That's anxiety in a nutshell. Also, the fear of the uncertain is absolutely anxiety. And the way to beat it is that you have to be certain in yourself to take on those uncertain situations. And that was a game changer for me, putting some self-worth into my value.
That's a big thing there too. I think your own value makes all the difference. Like when I was trying to leave BMW, I didn't feel like, I felt like that's all I could do. I started in a call center and then I worked into data, and I felt like that's all I could do. I could only work here. I'm just going to end up retiring. I'm going to be here for another 10 years. Then I'll retire from here and, I guess be a greeter at Walmart or whatever. And then I was just like, well, how do I and then someone at work helped me realize like, no, you're not a dumb person. Like you can apply yourself. And literally the first job I applied to, I got. And I'm like, holy shit, like why have I been so afraid of this change? Mm-hmm. And I've just like, oh no, I couldn't do it. I'm not good enough for it. I mean, there's other smart people. I'm not one of the smart people. I just got lucky and I got by and I'm here. But having that value in yourself, like believing in yourself, helps all of this really.
Oh yeah. Switching to paralegal was exactly like that. I thought, I'm not smart enough to do this. People way smarter than me. This isn't an area that I'm prepared for or that I'm intelligent enough to handle. And let me tell you, it's true. But there's a lot to take on. However, what I learned about myself is that I can definitely handle it. That is another area that I got completely uncomfortable with. Absolutely ridiculously uncomfortable. Working. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about, some more stories, I suppose.
Yeah. From
working in legal and the kind of stuff that, makes you pretty uncomfortable when you have no choice. You have no choice. So like, first of all, starting out in divorce, you see everyone's financials, period. I mean, I see your whole life, your debt, your credit card, everything you spent money on. I'm seeing everything. If there's a question of infidelity, then I'm actually going through and getting the receipts from your credit card company and looking at what you had for dinner at X, Y, and Z place. It is very intimate. When I was doing personal injury, I'm reading through medical records and everyone's, life history kind of thing. it's an interesting world. You definitely dive into things that you're not comfortable with. And the very first time I was pushed to my limit was when we had a case, and it was a divorce, and we were probably 7 to 8 months in, and we had found out that the father was not acting appropriately with his children. So we made the move on that and called in, police department and everything, and went to the therapist, and the children were 4 and 6, and 4 and 6-year-olds don't tell stories that can hold up beyond a reasonable doubt in court. So the charges were dropped, and it was a Friday afternoon, and my boss wasn't there, and I got the phone call. And she was hyperventilating because she had to turn her children over to this man this weekend because of the parenting time arrangement. And now that there were no charges, that was the way things had to work. And that was the very first time that I was like, oh my Lanta. Mm-hmm. So started going through it, channeled my Tony Robbins training. Thank God I had watched some documentaries, and, I started asking things like, are you away from your kids? Where are you right now? Is everything okay? What do your surroundings look like? I'm away from my kids. They're with this person. I'm in a room by myself. Good. Okay. Then you called me, at least you're talking to me, kind of thing.
Right.
We had 2 more times that were probably pretty uncomfortable, that were beyond, the normal thing you'd see. I had a sergeant of the sheriff's department who had committed suicide partway through his divorce. And that was extremely uncomfortable because we ended up getting the suicide letter, and it was chilling. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's things you didn't realize you saw. And, then you're fighting for custody of the body so that the kids can have a funeral for the father. And then, you have another case where we were criminal defendants, and we did a good job. We were the criminal defense, and this man was being accused of domestic violence, and we did a pretty good job of shutting it down. And he beat up his current girlfriend. And I thought that was on me. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to my boss and saying, this is my fault. This is our fault. And that was the first time we had to have the conversation where he said, listen, I understand why you feel that way, but you have to realize that your job is to make sure that he has a fair proceeding. That's it. It is the DA's job to make sure that he goes to jail. And it is their job to make sure that happens. It is your job to make sure that his process is fair, mm-hmm. and that you uphold his rights. That is where you come in. You have to realize that you have to separate yourself from your job and this being a personal thing. Because he said, do you not think he deserves a defense? Does he not deserve someone? And you're kind of thinking, well, no, I don't know if I believe that.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not being in this practice. I can't say that because I stand for fair due process. So yeah, that's where I started getting way more experience in being uncomfortable, because I was having interactions with these people. I'm talking them through it. I'm dealing with it. It was a new world, and certainly opened my eyes, and I'm glad that I am where I am. The corporate world has led me to, I'm now with a boss that has started a new firm. And so we're doing complex, I'd say pretty complex commercial and transactional, litigation and then transactional real estate deals. And then we also do, we're starting to do trademarks and bankruptcy. So I'm out of the very emotionally driven stuff.
Right.
But everything I do is very uncomfortable. I mean, nobody likes to file for bankruptcy. Nobody likes to be sued. Nobody likes to be on the other side of that. And yeah, so it's hard, but it's super rewarding. I mean, yesterday we settled a case that was a family dispute over kind of a farming business, and it had been a rough case. just as far as family dispute. And yesterday we ended up getting a pretty good settlement offer, and he stuck it to him because I went through the accounting and traced the money, and, so those are the rewarding times.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's certainly not fun all the time.
I mean, like you said, it's one of those where I don't know if I could do that too. I mean, there's a lot of situations where, like, those kind of things, I would feel the same way you did, of like taking on myself, like, this is our fault in that one situation. But yeah, that's a tough thing, because you kind of have to separate yourself from there, especially in something as important as our legal system of, everyone's due that fair trial. And you don't want to say, well, this guy, he's obviously, like, he's doing this, but you're like, yeah, but where do you then draw that line? If you say, well, this guy doesn't get a fair trial, then, like, well, who else doesn't get a fair trial? And then you're in situations like we're in now, where you have to worry about what the hell's going on, based off of your background, the color of your skin, or whatever the case might be. Like, are you now being prejudged by the way you look, or the way you act, or that's a slippery slope.
And I will say that kind of across the board, it would appear from that case, because that was kind of an abnormality in the personal injury field that we did kind of as a favor. That's how they roll. I mean, the evidence collection was shoddy. The body cam stuff hadn't been sent over. We didn't have all the crime photos were taken by the victim. And there were a lot of, it was hard, because you really wanted to throw him a bone, because you're sitting here going, okay, I don't necessarily agree with my client's actions, but at the same time, like, you have to do your job, right, to put the person away. You have an obligation to go through the motions and do what you're supposed to. Right. And it was an eye-opening experience that I don't know that that's what's happening in the legal system, that isn't a private attorney, that's going on with the public defenders and the district attorneys. So that is a scary realization, because I have seen it. I have been very, very close to a wrongful death suit involving the police department. 19-year-old kid. It was super sketchy. And the internal affairs report did not contain the things that I really would have wanted to see to back that decision. Mm-hmm. But it was, it didn't go anywhere. And what does that tell you,
Yeah. Yeah.
We also took on stuff to do with the election that happened here in Colorado in the primary. Of course, I can't go into too many details on that, but we were shut down within a week, which is almost unheard of. I've never, in all of my experiences as a paralegal, I've never had a case dealt with and thrown out in about a week.
That's crazy.
Ever.
Yeah.
So it's a love-hate world living in legal. I really do like it.
Yeah, but like you said, you have those wins that kind of, quote unquote, make up for sometimes the uncomfortable situations. But to your point, with everything we've said here, being put in those uncomfortable situations has helped you grow more than you could imagine. Being in that with the divorce attorney and all of that situation obviously helps you grow to be able to be where you're at now, personally and professionally and that sort of thing. So, we're all put in situations, and again, it's how we react to those situations and how we have that mindset in it to embrace that uncomfortable situation and keep pushing through.
And offer positivity to be able to be uncomfortable and be able to see. That's the thing, I guess, is if you have enough exposure to it, then you'll not dull, yes, you will. You'll dull your senses to it. And that's something, it's weird because I feel like we need that, if it makes any sense. People really don't like being uncomfortable, but at the same time, it really does help you be able to listen, be able to function, find out who you are, be able to interact with others on a meaningful level. It's being uncomfortable has such a negative connotation. and you and I kind of talked about this before, where I feel like everything should be more fluid and things should just be events that happen. And we should put less emphasis on the bad, I guess, and the dramatic of when bad things happen, it is super dramatic. And when good things happen, it's just kind of whatever.
Yeah, it's like a 0 and -1 game. Like if it's good, it's 0, but if it's bad, it's -1, -2, and it's like, well, we're just sitting here in the negative. We never have an opportunity to go positive because we just stay neutral in the situation. And
sometimes it's not even bad.
Right.
Sometimes it's the perception that these things are bad when these things are just, you lock your keys in the car. Probably just a thing that happens, I've done it a billion times, and instead of getting frustrated with yourself, you just, you just take the good with the bad, and you kind of learn to roll with the punches. And for me, it certainly helped with mental health, because being so wound up all the time and not having exposure to being uncomfortable and thinking that the world owed me to not make me uncomfortable was a detriment on my part. Mm-hmm. You get out there in the world and you get your hands dirty, and sometimes you say things that are wrong. I don't know if you saw that, but I had posted something yesterday on Facebook, and I was like, I had re-looked at what I was doing or what I had posted and was like, I don't agree with that. And so I revised it. I didn't take it down. I left it up, and I revised my statement. And that's what I feel like you should be able to do. You shouldn't be on the hook for what you knew before then, as long as you've made it to a point where you know now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because you can see that, and obviously I'm not making light of a lot of situations that have come up, like things that happened in the past and now they're getting brought up to people. But a lot of times it's things, people said things or did things, and they're like, I had no idea that this was going to be like the biggest issue. It's like, not to promote people doing blackface or anything like that, but it's like when you have Jimmy Fallon, after however many years when he was on SNL, they did a bit that never aired. All of a sudden that just gets brought up when all of this stuff starts resurfacing again. You're like serious, like he's obviously not going to do it now. We understand that, hey, things aren't right just because we did things in the past, and then we go, oh shit, that was wrong. Let's make changes to make sure we don't do something like that again. You can't take back what has already happened. But if you keep beating people down for the things that they did in the past, people are going to be so scared to do anything, because who knows who that's going to possibly offend later on.
Yes, you're already seeing that.
Right, exactly. There's nothing you can do.
Kevin Hart took it pretty hard when he had his thing. I didn't read too much into it, but I do know that he was getting hated on pretty hard for a minute. Yeah.
Right now there's I think it's Crystalia. I'm a big fan of Crystallized comedy. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks of that. But like just a couple of days ago, he was being called out on Twitter about like messing with underage girls is kind of the concept. And they showed like, this was years ago kind of thing. And I'm like, it's one of those, like, not to say you aren't a victim in a situation, but at the same point in time, just to blast someone now that he has a kid and he's back in the media limelight, like it is now the time to make that happen. But you see, like, they showed like back and forth emails. He's like, yeah, like multiple people came out and said things, and someone showed an email, and it was like this girl emailing him, asking him to meet with like X, Y, and Z. And then he responded with something, and then everyone's like, what a piece of shit he is. And I'm like, but did you not read? Like, there's not a, what's, and like those kinds of things just frustrate me. And again, I'm not knowledgeable enough to understand the full circle of everything. I unfortunately try to keep a lid on everything that I read news-wise, because I don't know, I'm not good at distinguishing what angle some of these things are coming from, and I don't want to have that bias of I'm only reading something from X and I'm only getting that one point of view, and I'm not kind of getting the full picture. So, I mean, it's probably ignorant to say, but then I just don't look at any of it, which is obviously not a good thing to do either. But so I just get my news from your Facebook feed. So keep it up, because that's the only way I'm going to know things happen, Katie.
Yeah, and I do try to stay pretty down the line. I mean, that's the thing. I don't, I actually don't identify one way or the other is interestingly enough. I do think I like the idea of the free market and the American dream and that using a free economy in the right way. I also like, of course, democracy and voting and having everyone involved. But the pull seems to be, do we want to stick with what we have, or do we want to go to something that everyone else is doing that is working out okay? But, here we have something that nowhere else does on the planet. And dare I even say it, like, you'll be most uncomfortable here if you come here. We have everything. You can make it your own way. You can fall on your face, and you can do whatever you like, be whoever you like. And that I think is something that is awesome and unprecedented in the rest of the world, that you have that freedom. And we just have to be careful, because I think we do want to maintain that while we do take care of everyone. But that freedom is something that a lot of those places have given up. And individuality and being uncomfortable, those are things that those countries don't have anymore. They might be uncomfortable with the way, I don't know, are they? The China's using social credit, and they don't, a lot of the people kind of our age and in our demographic, I guess, over there would be comparable, like it, because there's advantages to being a good citizen, where here there's only disadvantages if you're not, I suppose, is the way it reads.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah, on paper it can look that way.
Mm-hmm. So it's just very, it's a careful balance of not going too far to where everything has to be protected and so comfortable that we don't expand our minds anymore.
Yeah.
That we get into a point where things are so comfortable and kind of handed out that we just go with the flow and don't test anything. And in my opinion, those are the kind of where art starts to die, I suppose, is when you lose the freedom to do that, to make art. And I'd say in places like China, it's a little less encouraged. Here, you can make art about whatever you like. We have all kinds of art, and I think that's amazing. All kinds of cultures, all kinds of learning experiences that other places just don't have. And I urge people to continue trying to be uncomfortable and get used to being uncomfortable, rather than strive for just a world where you can live comfortably and just forget everything else, where there's no struggle, no reason to live, no spice of life, j'ai la vivre, or whatever. Is that what it is, right?
C'est la vie.
Isn't that the French term?
Yes, c'est la vie.
I didn't take French. I took Spanish.
You took Spanish, and I'm Puerto Rican, and you know more Spanish than me. So full honesty, when you sent that message earlier on Facebook, I obviously had to Google it because I had no idea what you said.
I figured.
Yeah. Because I'm like, me dos. That's all I know.
Oh, God.
Well, Puerto Rican.
Spanish 3?
Do what?
Didn't you go through Spanish 3?
No, because we'll talk about this when we get off the air. I'm going to end on your high note, and then we'll talk about how I don't know Spanish, and I'll blame my father for it. But thanks for chatting with me for a good little bit. I think this is an important thing that people really need to kind of grasp, because it kind of can make all of the difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. You shouldn't be offended, and you shouldn't be afraid of it, and it shouldn't be something scary. And you should honestly, look at all the things you can learn from it. If I hadn't gone out and kind of been, I don't want to say an antagonist, but if I actually make those comments, and then people come to me because people don't want to say those things out loud themselves. So then they'll say something to me. People also privately message me too. I'm open to that and talk to people. It's interesting what's come from that.
Mm-hmm.
Come my way. A lot of learning, a lot of reconnecting with people, I have been blocked a couple of times, let's be honest, but
that's okay. We all have that. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to have, if you guys want Katie on the show again, I think she's a wealth of knowledge in a lot of different areas, and it's just fun to talk to her. So I have no problem having her back on. So thanks again, Katie, for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for everyone else, you can reach out to me on socials everywhere at flores.run. You should know that because you should be listening to the show a lot. And if you don't, you should just do that anyways. I'd love if you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. Written review goes a long way. It helps all the algorithms and all the sciencey stuff, all that stuff we talked about earlier where they're tracking everything that you do and helping promote things that you do. This helps that. It helps other people find the podcast and maybe they can gather some useful information from the show. You can visit my website at www.flores.run. Check out all of my race recaps. I am updating the website. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff in the next few weeks once I can actually get to working on it. Gotta love the day job keeping me busy. But thank you so much for listening to the show today. Remember to keep running with purpose, one step at a time, and we'll see you next week.